Welcome to Sustainable Leadership Live. I'm Lisa Danforth, your host, and today I have the beautiful and marvelous Bernadette O'Brien Thompson here talking to us about genealogy and ancestral healing. So, Bernadette, thank you for joining us. I can't wait to hear what you have to share with us today.
Thank you, Lisa. I'm excited to be here.
All right. Before we jump in, I just want to share a little bit about Bernadette, why she's here, other than she's just fabulous and she's a wonderful woman. But Bernadette is a genealogist who focuses on ancestral healing. She's the founder and owner of Tell Me Our Story. And Bernadette is an expert at uncovering the unique stories in every family, helping them to discover the triumphs and the traumas their ancestors experienced, giving people a better understanding of who they are and where they came from. And today we're going to be talking about ancestral healing and the cultural heritage and how it impacts us today. So Bernadette, I say, let's jump right in. You ready?
Yes.
All right. So I would love to know, how did you start getting into this? Because it's so fascinating. And I know ancestral healing has become just something that a lot of people are talking about.
Well, my journey with genealogy began about 15 years ago, and I have, did a lot of traditional training in that field, which is kind of like learning all the basics and how to do the genealogy. But as I began working with a lot of different families, I also have a background in psychology and teaching and working with kids with trauma. And as I began working with families, I realized that I was really understanding more about this journey that we were taking together. And as I helped people understand who their ancestors were, these incredible stories began to emerge that we found in the documents. In each, there are a lot of records that are out there that our ancestors are part of, census records and immigration records and things like that. And within those specific records, there are little nuggets of information that are very specific to each family. And so it began where instead of just putting names on an ancestry tree, it actually became more about opening up this beautiful story that each family has.
And can you share just a little bit about your name as well? Because, most people tell me your story, because I think it's fascinating and it really anchors the work that you're doing.
Do you mean my maiden name, which is Bernadette Margaret Teresa O'Brien? That is my, you can tell from that I have Irish ancestry. And it's interesting. When I was younger, it was always easy for people to understand who I was just by hearing my name. So
it's pretty clear.
Pretty clear, yes.
So tell me our story, though, instead of tell me your story. Can you just explain a little bit about that and, just how you came to that?
Tell me our story comes from the point of view of the child asking the parent. And as I began to get into more of helping people and bringing them towards this ancestral healing, I realized that it was really asking for our story. Like, what did we go through? How did we get here? And that's really where the importance is. How did we get here? And you discover some amazing things, connections that you didn't know, but also understanding the traumas or tragedies that also happened in families, that we really learned from those. So that's kind of where the Tell Me Our Story where the name came from.
Yeah. So that genealogy and understanding, like you're saying, the triumphs and the traumas and how it impacts us moving forward today and our childhood. Can you talk a little bit more about ancestral healing and explain it a little bit?
Sure. Ancestral healing, well, it's interesting because I can immediately connect it with today's audience. And just, when we look at the world around us today and all the social injustices and how we as a society have been dealing with them, And certainly, the largest one is the impact of slavery and the African American community. And sometimes it's not always something that we think that we can understand completely, certainly from the point of view of them experiencing it. But as you start to go through your own history, you realize that there are traumas and difficulties that each family has experienced. And science is now telling us, the science of epigenetics tells that when we have experienced a trauma, it changes the way our genes react. And so what happens is they talk about it in terms of a gene turns on or off, so that our reaction can be a positive or a negative. And if someone has experienced trauma, their reaction to the world is very different than somebody who has not experienced trauma. And so this is where the whole idea of ancestral healing comes through. Because those that came before us, there have been a lot of difficulties they've experienced. And the type of experience, what causes an ancestral trauma could be slavery, the idea of slavery, families that were enslaved, or the Holocaust, the Trail of Tears for the Native Americans, where they were relocated. Trauma can be caused by people experiencing war or violence. Child abuse can be part of it. It also can be from, there were a lot of families separated during all of these tumultuous times. And so children and parents didn't get to make those bonding experiences. And so sometimes the trauma is related to not being able to connect with each other. And so all of these things lead to a generation now that is experiencing trauma-like reactions, even though we didn't have the trauma necessarily ourselves. And a trauma response, which is what that would be, can show up as being hypervigilant, which means that you're constantly on alert. It can be that you have nightmares, or tendencies or fears that you just are not natural. You can have more sadness or depression than you should normally have if your life appears to be in order, that you shouldn't be feeling those type of things. And it really is the understanding between the generations. Sometimes it comes from when we look at how we are treated by our parents, and we might think that, there is some, things that we may feel are unfair, or you don't understand why you're being treated that way. But if you look back to what their history was and how they were raised, or what their parents had gone through. There are a lot of baby boomers out there, and that generation is the ones whose grandparents were the immigrants. So there's still a lot of immigration stories that are affecting us today. And that's where we also can make the connection to the world around us. Understanding that we've all come through some unique challenges getting to where we are today.
And how that impacts us moving forward. Like you had mentioned earlier, and just, it's kind of what's wrong with me that I can't figure this out. Everything around me is good. I should be happy. I shouldn't be struggling with this. But what I'm really hearing is that when we understand our genealogy and folks start learning about ancestral healing, how that impacts our choices today, and really I hear also our self-confidence. It has the ability to.
It absolutely. And I gave you kind of the bigger picture, but to give you and I'll use myself as an example. And we talked about my name, Bernadette, Margaret Teresa O'Brien. So my ancestors were all, most of them, I'm all Irish, and my ancestors were famine families. So they came during the Great Famine. I actually have a great-grandfather that came on the ship, the Erin go Bragh, in 1849, and it was a famine ship. So they came with this scarcity. They had nothing. So many of the immigrants came with $20 sewn into the hem of their skirt, and that was all they had. And that came down, that scarcity, is a real thing that can be passed down from generation to generation. And so the next generation in my family, so I had the ancestors that came in maybe the 1840s and 50s and 60s, but the next generation were my grandparents or my great aunts and uncles, and they experienced it as well. And so I didn't know any of this until after my parents had passed away, and I started deeply looking into my family. And I realized that this scarcity model was passed down, and that I actually acted, I have to fight that every day, that I don't need to worry about food. I don't need to worry about having, a roof over my head. And that is a good example of something that is passed down, this idea of scarcity. So that is a good example, but I could share a few more as well.
Yeah. I'm really hearing what it gives us more compassion for ourselves and for
Mhm.
others, that we do the best with the tools that we have. And
Right.
when we understand, it's amazing when we start understanding why people behave the way that they do. I love a book by Oprah Winfrey and Bruce, I can't remember, and it's What Happened to You, not what's
Mhm.
wrong with you. We so often hear what's wrong with you, but it's what
Yes.
happened to you and how you were treated as a child, or it could just have been, some trauma from the year before.
Right.
But it gives us compassion not only for ourselves and our struggles so that we can start moving through it, but also more empathy and compassion for the people around us so that we can live and lead more sustainably.
Yeah, well, it's amazing, because it truly is. This is a gift that we give ourselves when we uncover our ancestry and our genealogy. And it's a gift we give ourselves because we're in this life, and we have our own set of struggles, and we don't always understand those feelings. And sometimes to be able to look back and see what this gift of our ancestry gives us. And I happen to be somebody that has a very strong spiritual side, and feel a little bit that those ancestors are still with us and still on our shoulders, trying to share with us that they were able to come through, or that they made those sacrifices because they knew they wanted a better life for their descendants. So it's really an amazing experience. And it's something, if some of you out there may have watched the show Finding Your Roots, and the work that I do is very similar to that, where you really are finding out what it is in your history, in your genealogy, that it could help with your life today. And we talk about sustainability and just being more empathic and being present in the world. All of this helps us to understand each other much better when you can understand yourself.
You had a quote that you were reading in the green room. Would you like to share that with us? Because it really, I believe, ties this together just beautifully. If you've got it at your fingertips,
Um,
if you don't, that's okay.
a sustainable leader. Quote?
There was a quote from a gentleman that you had mentioned that was
Yes.
just, yeah.
His name is Alberto Pastor, and he says a sustainable leader must have a set of personal characters and managerial traits that enable him or her to lead with empathy inside a multitask holder environment. A sustainable leader is someone who inspires and supports action towards a better world. And sustainable leaders in this day and age have such a strong task of being having empathy and understanding, not only who their employees are, but who their clients are, and how we all fit into the world around us. So it really is, while it seems like genealogy is digging just into the past and how can that really affect the future, it's all about that empathy and that understanding, and making us fit, not even fit, but just understand the world we're fitting into.
Right, right. More compassion, empathy all the
More
way around,
compassion.
which I think it's amazing. So how do you get started with people with working with the ancestral healing? Where is it that you sort of start digging in?
So, it is, I meet people where they're at. And I have worked with so many different people. Sometimes it's related to the loss or the worry about the loss of the last storyteller. And the journey begins there. And as they begin that journey, they suddenly realize the world that's opening up to them as I'm showing them the ancestral healing part of it as well. Other times it may be people have an adoption in their family, and there's curiosity of to where that adoption, who are we attached to genetically, and so people come to me for all different reasons. I can help people with the DNA and understanding why that would be helpful in the journey of understanding who you are. But it is so people come to me, they find me often through my website, tellmeourstory.com.
Great website, by the way.
Yeah, and I often sit with them. Most people come and I offer a 30-minute free consultation to help them understand just where they are and what they might be interested in looking at within their family, and to understand what this ancestral healing can mean personally to themselves. It's now a tool that psychologists and therapists are using in therapy with their clients, because it's such an important part of who we are.
And so agree, just understanding.
Right.
And I know in the work that I do with business owners, like they can't explain why they want to do something, but it stops them. And I'm like, it's within our DNA
Right.
to protect ourselves, right? To
Right.
keep ourselves safe. And when we can start opening that up, it's amazing what's possible for us to step into, to build, to grow, whether it's relationships, businesses, whatnot.
Well, we're often holding on to something that doesn't belong to us.
Yeah. And we don't even know it, right?
When we don't know it. We don't know it. And I know that this really can be very opening and releasing, and just brings forgiveness, and it brings peace. It's an amazing experience to go through.
Wow. So let's talk a little bit about the triumphs, and how understanding what the triumphs are that our families go through can also support us moving forward.
And that is, as we go through this ancestral healing work, that is one of the gifts. And you see the connections that you have with ancestors that you may never have thought you did. I have a family of writers. I come from a writer. I have an ancestor that was an amazing writer, and we never knew this. This wasn't something that I grew up knowing. So it's something that you discover, these connections. I was working with somebody who was in the medical field, only to find out that her great grandfather was a field doctor in the Civil War. But yeah, it's incredible, those connections. I mean, there's also the feeling of the struggles that they got through, and it gives you confidence that you can get through the struggles that you're experiencing. But the happiness and the joy that you find. I worked with a client who was he worked with middle school students, and he was the shop guy, and they were making fifes, the little musical instruments. And I was doing his genealogy, and his fourth great grandfather was a fifer in the Revolutionary War.
Oh, get out. And he didn't know that.
Wow. So there's it's incredibly, cool. And then, but I've also done the other side where, I found, the ancestral healing side, where I worked with a client whose mom was 50 years old when she was adopted, and she found out at 50 that she was adopted when her parents had both passed away. And she was called by a private detective and said, "Did you know you were adopted?" So there's, yeah, the amazing, and it brought healing to her when we went through the process, and we went through the DNA discovery, and so there's so much joy, even in the sad stories, that you can gain But, finding out that, you and an ancestor shared something is often a wonderful thing, especially if you can picture them, like if you can see their picture, which you can often do.
Yeah, I think it also allows us to step into something that we're like, I don't know why I want to make fives, but I really want to make, just it
Right.
allows us to be like, okay, this is fun, this is okay, and really start stepping into things more authentically and just embracing who we are.
Hmm.
And connecting to our ancestors, but also the community. I'm really sensing in what you're saying is it actually has an essence of being community building as
Oh
well.
my goodness, it is. It is absolutely. But even the younger generation, I just did a talk, and I had maybe a late 20s, early 30s, come up to me after, and she told me this amazing story about her great grandmother who was Russian and had fled from the Tsar and came to the United States, and she helped other women who were immigrants who were in her position. She helps some of them get safe abortions and find housing and get settled, like incredible things. And here she's this very successful young woman now, and I was telling her how that came, that she has that great grandmother as this incredible role model. And she was told the story by her mother and her grandmother, this story about her great grandmother. So it is, intergenerational and very, connects families.
I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
Believe it or not, we are at time. I would
Talk
love to
for a long
ask you
time.
though,
Mhm.
is there a question that I didn't ask you or something that you want to make sure that that is said?
I would say that what I would say is that it really is important to know who you are. We all want to know, answer those questions. Who am I and where did I come from? And it really is an uplifting and a wonderful thing to do. And I would just encourage you in some way to, whether to reach out to me or in some way to begin your own journey, because there are many blessings that you can get from it.
And this is probably going to be along the same vein, but if people walked away with just one thing today, what is it that you would like for them to be pondering, thinking, or moving towards?
That you are part of something greater than yourself that has helped you to get to where you are. And even if that place right now doesn't feel that way, know that you truly are a part of something greater than yourself.
I love
So,
that. Thank
yeah.
you. Thank you, Bernadette. I really appreciate it. Where can people reach out to you, connect with you, find you on social media?
Well, I'm on LinkedIn, Bernadette O'Brien Thompson. You can tellmeourstory.com is where I have an awful lot of information, including about ancestral healing and genealogy and what both of those look like. And again, I offer a 30-minute free consultation for anybody that just wants to dip their toe in and just see what it's all about. Come, and I'm happy to talk with you. So.
Definitely take Bernadette up on that. It is absolutely amazing. Whether you post a comment in the chat, if you're watching this on replay, please hit #replay. But you can reach out to her on LinkedIn or on her website. So be sure to
And
check her
also
up on
on
that.
Facebook, Tell Me Our Story on Facebook as well.
Perfect. So many different areas we can reach out to you.
Yes.
All right. Awesome. Thank you, Bernadette. I really appreciate it. And thank you everyone for joining us. Please join me next week, 11 a.m. East Coast, 8 a.m. Pacific for another episode of Sustainable Leadership Live. Until then, we will see you next week.